What is up, faithful? Welcome back to an episode of Clutch Gene Sports. I'm with my guy Rohan Chakravarti. How's it going, Rohan?
Hey, doing good, man. Another what do you call it? Another Tuesday, and we get to talk some Niners.
Yeah, a lot of drama going on, right? Between Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. It sounds like possibly Brandon Aiyuk may want out. Brandon Aiyuk may be upset with the organization, depending on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it as the Brandon Aiyuk perspective, the team perspective, and stuff like that. So on today's episode, we'll be talking briefly, obviously, the Brandon Aiyuk situation. There's drama brewing. We'll talk about a little bit about if he gets a contract, but we're also going to talk about after that. I do want to get into it with Rohan to talk about which four other 49ers should be up for a contract extension this offseason, and if the 49ers will make an extension with any of their players that are restricted or unrestricted free agents after this following season. So we'll talk about that. Before we get into anything, Rohan, the main part of all this drama, right, going on. What up, brother Bob? But the main importance of everything, right, is there's drama brewing. And for those who aren't familiar with what's going on with the Brandon Aiyuk situation, so Brandon Aiyuk is looking for a contract extension. Now, Brandon Aiyuk also has met with the team as of yesterday, right, Rohan? It was yesterday he met with the
Yep.
organization. His plan was to hash things out. Obviously, when you're in person and there's a debate going on or there's something going on and it's very personal, obviously being there in person is a lot easier than going through an agent, emailing someone or texting someone or because they don't really do phone calls. They usually go through the agent. That's how they get the contract or the offers in, and the agent will relay it to his client, and then they'll come up with a counter offer and they'll send that back to the organization. So when you're looking at everything, Brandon Aiyuk's been upset and he's been very vocal about it. Then they had a meeting, and then today he goes on a Instagram post and he comments, "I thought they weren't trying to trade me." Obviously, that's a shot at the 49ers for whatever is happening. So that's where we're at right now. And all over social media, well, actually, before we even get into talk about Brandon Ayuk, all over social media, you have fans that are either saying trade him, he's not worth it, or pay him. Somewhere in the middle, like, you know what? I don't care what the team does. We have a good enough team. Why do you think fans, Rohan, are in that situation where they're, you know what? F him, trade him.
I think we get through this carousel kind of every single offseason, and just the dynamic of these contract negotiations and the way they're displayed in the public, right? We don't truly know what offers are being thrown out, what's going on, but when you see other teams giving these offers out and other players accepting them, you wonder why aren't the 49ers or why isn't Brandon Aiyuk in the same situation? Obviously, when you hear the word offer being thrown out where Brandon Aiyuk wants more than what the 49ers are given, the natural inclination is why is he kind of being greedy, right? When all of these other players have agreed to certain offers at this stage. And I think that's where the thought, especially this late in the process, that's where the thought process goes. And the issue is the players villainize themselves in a way, or at least to the fan base, when they're trying to negotiate. Brandon Ayuk's only leverage, only chip is the public. He doesn't really have as much leverage, and we'll get through that in a moment. But the way that he kind of experiences or expresses his frustration is through social media with comments like, I thought the Niners weren't trying to trade me. Comments through his wide receivers coach and all of this and all of that we've kind of seen over the last few months. And unfortunately, it's half of the fan base goes towards Ayuk's side, half of the fan base goes the other side. And so that's where I'm kind of that's kind of where the situation is at the moment. Obviously, there's a bit of a stalemate. You're hoping things can patch up sooner than later with training camp kind of a month away. But to right now, I think it's just the natural carousel that kind of goes along where you're as fans, you're a little frustrated that this deal isn't done already. And so I think that that's kind of where the process.
Do you think for a fan to calling out Brandon Ayuk in this situation, in terms of I've seen people calling him a diva, people calling him other words that I won't say on the show because I'm not about to call someone what he's being called, right? But like when he's being called this diva XYZ, I've never and that's why I ask you this. Have you ever heard Brandon Aiyuk during the season when he was with Jimmy Garoppolo or even the last couple of seasons complain that he's not getting the ball in the offense? I've never heard that. So I don't know where this diva phrase is coming from. It sounds like people are calling him a diva because of the contract negotiations, but I'm pretty sure most people would be in the same situation on doing whatever they have to do in order to get their word across to the public and stating where their frustration is and why it lies and how the negotiation is going to get the public on their side. Do you think Brandon Ayuk's a diva?
No, I don't think diva is the right word. I mean, you see the thing about a word like diva, you only hear it when these negotiations are going on. Ayuk has kind of bid his time. He's done his part, throughout the last few years. He hasn't complained usually when he hasn't been the focal point of the offense and things like that. And now that he is, he just wants to get his money's worth. I don't think players. I don't really truly know how many NFL players that fans characterize as divas at times are truly actually divas. I think that there are some where you can see that there are frustrations wherever they end up going, but I don't think Brandon Ayuk is in that category.
Shout out to dedicated. I'm not going to say the first one. Dedicated gaming platform. I was probably to say it wrong. But he goes, 49ers front office are stuck in, but the locker room and the leaders of the team are raving for a BA contract at $25 million. I've not seen one player talk about BA's contract at $25 million. I don't see $25 million happening. The reason is we saw Deebo Samuel get extended a few years ago. And when you look at Deebo
Right.
Samuel's average per year, if you want to look at the contracts and everything, I believe he's sitting roughly at 23.8 or 24 million average per
Mm-hmm.
year. So when you look at that, there's no way with the huge explosion of the receiver market that I see Brandon Aiyuk settling for 25 million per year, unless the 49ers decide to go 55 million guaranteed at signing, which would make him the second highest guaranteed money at signing. Then you could lower the APY, but I've not seen one player talk about his contract in terms of money wise, and I don't see a team doing it or Brandon Ayuk's side doing it because Deebo Samuel just got paid, and that would put Deebo Samuel lower than like the seventh ranked receiver. It would put him barely like in the top 10. And I don't see him doing that with the explosion of the receivers, him just being named to the second team All Pro. I don't see that happening. Rohan, do you see him taking a contract at 25 million?
No, and just for reference, let's just look at the top 10, only APY. Let's just look at the top 10 receivers, and you'll see the amount of receivers that changed the market this offseason. Justin Jefferson obviously leads the way at $35 million. That one was just a completely different deal than we've seen, obviously, one that blew the market away. But even if you look underneath him, A.J. Brown got a new deal this year. And that was a 3-year, $96 million deal, 32 per year. He's number two. At number three, Amon-Ra St. Brown at just over $30 million a year. At number five, Jalen Waddle got $28.25 million a year. At number eight, Devontae Smith, he got $25 million a year. At number nine, Nico Collins got $24.25 million a year. And so when you look through all of these contracts, you're wondering, is Brandon Aiyuk better, or is he around the same caliber as some of these players? Sure. And I just named you, I believe, six guys that just got extensions this offseason that have now made it into the top 10 in money at average, like APY, average per year, at the receiver position. And so when you're looking at that, do you expect Brandon Aiyuk to be underneath that category? Because Deebo Samuel's at 11, and you expect Brandon Aiyuk to be ahead of him and also in the range of some of these guys. The unfortunate reality is at the beginning of the offseason, when we were talking about $25 million per year, the market has completely changed from there. The receivers that I named, I believe, if you are at 25 million per year, that's the number 8 receiver in the NFL right now. Devontae Smith. And I understand there are a lot of different ways that people view contracts. New money, the way that it's attached to the final year of your deal, which kind of makes the APY a little lower, trumped up cap hits at the end of the contract to sweeten the deal and things like that. There are different ways to view contracts, but if you're viewing it as a purely APY kind of category, you see that six of the top 10 receivers got deals this offseason, and Brandon Aiyuk is in that category if you're talking about caliber of receiver.
And even if we wanted to point at, for example, I think the more important number is the fully guaranteed number, right? We just saw Justin Jefferson explode that market at 88. I don't see Brandon Aiyuk coming close to that. We saw AJ Brown with his new deal get 51 fully guaranteed. Calvin Ridley, who I think isn't as good of a receiver, 47. Jerry Jeudy,
Right.
he got 41. So it's like, okay, now
Mhm.
we look at the number, Debo's at 41. So you're looking at least for Brandon Aiyuk to surpass some of those guys. Some of the guys you also mentioned, Nico Collins, he just had his first 1,000-yard season after two 400-yard seasons. Devontae Smith, he got extended early, right? After year 3. I know a
One
lot of
full
people
year.
on my comment section on Twitter were like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. The Niners could have extended Brandon Aiyuk last year and saved money." After your third fully accrued season, you could get extended in the NFL. The Niners could have, after his first 1,000-yard season, they could have signed him on a team-friendly deal where they know that you could see the talent that Brandon Aiyuk had last year, and you could tell that he was in for another breakout season. So I just don't see Brandon Aiyuk taking less money at that 25 range. And I know Dedicated Gaming Platform says, granted, this was before the offseason with the wide receiver blow up. We have 49ers throwback. The 49ers need Aiyuk more than they need him. Otherwise, the passing game takes a huge back, and Debo doesn't beat man coverage, unlike Aiyuk. Well, thanks for sending us into our second segment, throwback, because one of the topics we wanted to talk about was the importance of Brandon Aiyuk to the 49ers offense and the importance of um, BA to Brock Purdy. So I put out a poll yesterday just to do a quick little poll on Twitter. And I was just very curious to see if if fans think the 49ers have changed their mindset on things. And the poll that I put out was essentially asking fans if they think the 49ers essentially believe that they don't need BA. So my question was, do the Niners believe they do not need top receivers anymore because they have a top quarterback? And the answers you could choose from were yes, they need offensive line, not receiver, which is meaning that the quarterback is able to elevate the offense no matter what. And then the second answer was no, they need Brandon Aiyuk for Brock Purdy. I'm curious, Rohan, what is the importance of a Brandon Aiyuk to not only to Brock Purdy, but to the 49ers offense in whole?
I think this is a great question. I think that when you go into it, there are a lot of layers to it. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about the 49ers offense this offseason. In when you find out, that there are conversations about several players, several key players, especially skill position players, that it could have gone one way or another this offseason. Aiyuk obviously was involved, Debo Samuel was involved, and you start to question which guys can the 49ers kind of not afford to lose. And I think you can make an argument for everybody. And I also think you can make the argument that the 49ers can make do without some of these players, but Brandon Aiyuk is unique in a certain way. But he's also unique in a non-49er way. When people think about the 49ers, you think about those versatile weapons, guys like Christian McCaffrey and Debo Samuel, who are unique at their positions. Debo Samuel, you don't see many players built like him. You see a lot of teams try and emulate that type of player because you don't have that type of physical presence that can do a lot of different things that normally wide receivers don't do. Christian McCaffrey, the same thing. He can play wide receiver essentially out of the backfield as a running back. That's not a norm for running backs. Aiyuk is your traditional receiver, but he's a traditional receiver that is at the top of the game at what he does, which is beat man coverage. That's the number one skill that a lot of teams look for when you look at a receiver. Can you beat man coverage? Because that's the number one concept, that the most difficult concept to beat, and that's what the best teams utilize, because the best teams have the best corners, or the best corners. They are usually man cover corners, and so Aiyuk has that skill. He has that skill, and he beats every other 49er by a pretty wide margin because He's got good speed. He's got great route running capabilities, and he's got good hands. He's got the trio of things that you kind of need to be a deep threat or to really be a over the top man beater as an outside receiver. That's what makes him different. And so when you take that away, you question, can the 49ers offense function? Yes. But when you talk about the ceiling of the 49ers offense, or what really puts this offense over the top, adds an extra layer of dynamic to it, it's a player like Brandon Aiyuk. Because the one thing that really we saw this year is the 49ers developing a capable downfield attack that can be consistent. Brock Purdy, with his willingness and
Mm-hmm.
accuracy to throw it downfield, you need a receiver like Brandon Aiyuk in order to make that happen, so you get those downfield capabilities. And the one thing that I point to, Kyle Shanahan, since he's had Jimmy Garoppolo, has looked for that downfield presence. You see it at the top, as the top progression in a lot of those plays. This year, those plays started to come to fruition because you have a guy like Aiyuk and you have a guy like Purdy. And so that's where the value of Aiyuk can't be understated. Because while we've kind of been, we've kind of been accustomed to this 49ers style where you're physical, you have versatile players, we are also starting to become accustomed to the style that the Niners can be a traditional offense on top of that. And so you question which guys are more valuable than others. And like I said, you can make an argument for a lot of different players, but I think Brandon Aiyuk has a special importance to this offense that differs from several of his teammates because he's got the number one skill that you look for in a receiver and the number one skill that makes the 49ers offense, that puts them over the top, makes them that dynamic offense with that deep threat that has the capabilities that he has.
And I know Throwback goes on and says he's like, Rohan, we can't deny that Brock Purdy made Ayuk better. Even though he was always open, Jimmy wouldn't throw him the ball. Now, one thing that you mentioned here, Throwback, is he was always open. Now, that doesn't mean that Brock made him better. That just means that Brock is capable of getting him the ball. Now, that, like, you're mentioning that he was always open. Now, when I look at Brandon Aiyuk in the offense, one thing that is very evident from Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk's connection is the understanding that Brandon Aiyuk is going to get open on time and he's going to be there where Brock Purdy wants to put the ball. The anticipation throws that we see often that are usually to Brandon Aiyuk, those are very important for this offense because if not, once playoffs comes, once you start playing teams that are capable of going press man, for example, if Brandon Ayuk's not on this roster, you don't have anyone that could consistently win in a timely manner. What that means is you're going to have Debo Samuel most likely on the line of scrimmage having to beat press man. That's not his game. Ricky Pearsall also not his game. He's inconsistent at that. He could do it, but he's inconsistent at that off of his college film. So then you have Jawan Jennings, who also isn't a big time fast route runner or anything like that. Maybe Jacob Cowan could be that guy, but even then, he's a smaller guy. He's a rookie that you're expecting to throw into the fire. So if you don't have a Brandon Aiyuk in this offense, what you're going to start having teams do is stack the box, try to take away Christian McCaffrey. The moment you stack the box, you go press man. Now everything gets a little bit muggy. The timing is off. Now, what happens when Brock Purdy's timing's off and he has to extend plays? Yes, he could extend those plays, but it's great watching him do it when he has to, not all the time. Because doing it all the time, it's going to make your game completely different. It may lead to different interceptions that we've never seen. So yes, Brandon Aiyuk is extremely important to this offense. And a lot of fans, they tend to say, "Oh, we can win with or without him." We can win with or without him because our team is stacked. I agree, but it's much easier to win with him than without. Um,
And the question ultimately is, I think you can make an argument, like I said, to win without any of the top 3 or 4 players for the 49ers if you take one out of the equation. But the
I
goal
disagree.
ultimately is to win a Super
Take
Bowl.
away
I'll
Take away Christian,
go
and
ahead.
I think that's the hardest one. I don't think you could take away Christian on this offense right now.
Now, the reason I say that is because we had the formula back in 2019 when we were such a big rushing attack, where if you go by committee, you're able to win. I'm not saying that if you take away Christian right now and then this is the running back room that you can. I'm saying that you can create a different running back room to where you
Okay,
don't
okay.
necessarily need a type of guy like Christian McCaffrey. The point, though, is the 49ers have built this team because they want to win a Super Bowl. You need, not need, but it is significantly easier to accomplish that task when you have all of these weapons at your disposal. And when you're trying to look what is the most efficient way to win a Super Bowl, one, you need that outside receiver that you can kind of, uh, you know, point your target share towards and kind of win. That's Brandon Aiyuk. And two, for this Niners offense, you need that type of running back like Christian McCaffrey that is able to do the different things that he does. I think that those two guys are the guys that you kind of really point to and potentially can say that those two are the most important, I think. And it's just because those guys are the ceiling elevators to me. Those guys are the two guys that really elevate your ceiling. That's what I'm looking to when you're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Shout out to Radar. So if you guys are not familiar on Instagram, Command Radar. Obviously, he's a Commanders fan. You can see Jaden Daniels in his picture. Shout out to him. Obviously, tuning in because Brandon Aiyuk is connected to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, which we'll get to later when we talk about possible trade destinations. For me, I just think the element of the downfield attack that Brandon Aiyuk brings when you have to beat press man, and you're more likely going to have to do that in the playoffs. I think we've seen teams do it to the Niners in the playoffs, especially in the Super Bowl, right? Obviously, a way that the Chiefs feel like they could beat the 49ers. And this is not just one time in the Super Bowl, twice. Stack the box, go press man, and force your quarterback and the receivers to beat press man and beat you. And when you look at that, I think you have to have Brandon Aiyuk on the roster. I think not having him not only just makes the life of Brock Purdy harder, it makes it a lot harder on Kyle Shanahan having to scheme things wide open. And when you're not scheming things wide open, how does the offense look? We haven't seen that. We truly haven't seen that because you have a guy who can get separation and get open like Brandon Aiyuk. We've seen what he's capable of doing when he gets those 9+ targets in a game, going for 100+ yards and XYZ. So that's very interesting to see. And what I mean by Christian McCaffrey, right? So what I mean by taking Brandon Aiyuk off the roster, you're not able to replace him now. So you have to go into with the roster you already have. It's not like when the Niners trade Brandon Aiyuk, they're able to draft another receiver right away. Same thing with running back. If you take Christian McCaffrey off this roster with the running back room they have, I'm not sure they could
Yeah,
win with.
that's true.
So that's what I meant. If you take them off the roster, what it's like now, and obviously you're losing Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know a room with Brandon Aiyuk. To be honest, if we had to lose a receiver, I'd rather have to lose Debo if it was between the two, Brandon and Aiyuk, or Debo and Aiyuk. I would rather have an Aiyuk, Jennings, Pearsall receiver room than a Debo, Jennings, and Pearsall because I know for a fact that Brandon Aiyuk could beat press man. We've seen it game after game in the playoffs, big on the big stage. So that's where I'm at right now. We do see dedicated gaming platform is we need a little strong running back room to better offset the CMC loss.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
Golden Sam says BA lives in Reno, Nevada, closest tax-free state to Santa Clara. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
He's
He's still
also
going to get
from
taxed
there,
for
I believe.
California.
Yeah.
He's from the Bay. Then I believe he moved to Nevada. Grew up a
Mhm.
Niners fan, so I think that's also weighing in on him during this time. Is growing up a Niners fan and having to go through this negotiation, feeling disrespected. That plays a lot on someone, man. Especially when a lot of things get personal and you feel like it's a personal attack against you. The only issue, Golden Sam, is if I'm not wrong, Rohan, correct me if I'm wrong. He will still get taxed for the California wages because he's
Yeah.
playing those games in California, I believe. Correct?
Like I believe every game check gets taxed where you play. And so it depends. So like the reason that a lot of people talk about the tax free is because 8 of the games, your home games, get played at home where you don't get that tax free or you don't, get taxed per game check for those. But then the other game checks wherever you end up playing, that's where you'll get ultimately taxed for those.
So I was corrected. He grew up in Rockland. I thought it was the Bay. So I saw a video that he was from the Bay Area, or he went to. Maybe I'm wrong. I think you're right. I think he went to a JUCO in the Bay Area. Um,
Uh-huh.
so yeah. I believe he went to he went to a JUCO in the Bay. That's where my head is. I'm thinking he's from the Bay, but he's not. You're right. He's from Rockland. Went to a junior college in the Bay Area, Arizona State, but his family's from the Reno, Nevada area now. So Roger Morales, shout out to the Rams fan. How big of an offensive change do y'all believe will happen if BA is gone? I'm gonna let you go first on this one, Rohan.
I think that I don't know if the 49ers honestly changed their offense in terms of philosophy. I think Kyle Shanahan, he has a vision for his offense. I think he keeps it the same. Essentially, Ricky Pearsall, if Brandon Aiyuk is truly gone, which we'll get to if we believe that, but if he is gone, Ricky Pearsall goes into the Brandon Aiyuk role. He's now your outside
De
receiver
facto
that
number
kind of
one, yeah.
yeah, you kind of have him run the same routes as Brandon Aiyuk. And so the target distribution might change. I don't think the offensive philosophy changes, but you also probably place a bigger emphasis on guys like Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, obviously, the three others. You might find different ways to get Christian McCaffrey more targets. Debo Samuel, you might be, you might have a shorter average depth of target for Brock Purdy just because you're throwing shorter passes to Debo Samuel and working the yak game. And then to me, if Brandon Aiyuk is gone, the number one target for me is George Kittle. I think he's the guy who kind of takes over a bigger workload. Obviously, you worry the risk of injury with a bigger workload, but George Kittle seems like he'd kind of take over as the bigger role. To me, though, like I said, offensive philosophy doesn't really change with Ricky Pearsall in there. It's just the way that the Niners offense would look. Target production or the target share changes. The production probably changes for certain different players. And you probably see the Niners offense be less explosive. And so maybe less points. And you see an impact in a different way for their identity.
And I think definitely when you look at the offense, I think you're not going to really change the offense. And what I mean by that, so it's the 49ers were pretty like even in terms of their what they ran. So they tried a lot of 21 personnel. They ran that at a 37.8%, which is I believe second ranked in the NFL. And then out of 11 personnel, which majority of the NFL was going to, is essentially 11 personnel, which is new 21 personnel. They're using that bigger receiver as that blocker. And kind of what the Rams have done. They went 11 personnel, a little more pass heavy. So it's not the same offense as Kyle Shanahan normally runs. However, they're out of EPA, they're ranked out of EPA. The Niners are number one, even though they're the 31st ranked team that runs this 11 personnel. They rank first out of EPA. So I still think there'll be a run heavy offense. Now, within the first three quarters, the Niners passed the ball 17th in the NFL in terms of passing within the first three quarters. The entire game it was 32nd. Obviously, they led a lot of those games. So I think they would still be in that 17th range. It might drop to like 20, 23 range only because you don't have that true passing attack of an offense. If they do lose Brandon Aiyuk, but honestly, I don't see the offense changing much. I think even with when you look at the Niners with Jimmy Garoppolo, they still ran a Kyle Shanahan like offense, which is run first, get into the play action, make easier throws for your quarterback. So typically, just what the Niners like to do. Obviously, it's go 20, 21 personnel, and then 11 personnel when they want to. So definitely going to be interesting to what they do. Radar says, do you think the Niners played their hand with Brandon Aiyuk's contract extension? Because I would have extended him last year. This is a great question, Rohan. Would you have extended Brandon Aiyuk last year, or do you think this was the perfect offseason to see him do it again for another full year? And did they overplay their hand thinking, you know what? The receiver market is not going to explode that much and we could get him someone a good deal. What are your thoughts on this question? Great question, by the way.
Yeah. It is a great question, and I'm actually working on an article for this because I think it's a philosophy kind of thing with the way that teams extend players. The Niners have been pretty vocal that they like to extend players with 1 year left on their contract. That's why Debo Samuel got extended, with the 1 year left, even though he didn't have a fifth year option. Brandon Aiyuk, they wait for the 4 years, and then this is after his fourth year that they're looking to extend him. They do it with 1 year left on their contract. That's not the same with other teams. Marco pointed out the example earlier. The Philadelphia Eagles chose to extend Devontae Smith, a 2021 first-round pick, after his third year. He still has his fourth year and the fifth-year option, and the Eagles decided that they wanted to go ahead and extend him early. I think that there is a value in extending after the third year. Now, I do think teams have kind of shied away from this recently because the team that really loved to do this back when they were true contenders and won a Super Bowl was the Los Angeles Rams. They had a significant number of players that they extended after their third year, notably Todd Gurley, Jared Goff, and they were trying to get ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, those contracts ended up hurting them a little bit. Gurley, obviously his injuries kind of hurt him. The Rams ultimately cut him. The Rams also traded Jared Goff after giving him such a big deal to get Matthew Stafford. They ate a lot of money in that deal. Ultimately they got the Super Bowl, but that's what teams are worried about. And when you give them such a big contract, you're worried that that deal is ultimately going to come back and potentially hurt you down the line because you're doing such a big investment so early. To me, though, I think there is, especially with the way that markets are significantly rising at positions like receiver and quarterback. I think there is a true value in going after that third year. I think the Niners could have, or at least should have, tried to address the topic last offseason, like the Eagles did this year, because Devontae Smith's price probably is $5 million per year higher next year, or $3 million per year higher next year. I think the Niners could have done this. They could have found a better way also to structure the deal, because you have one more year of a cheap, cost-controlled contract that you can shift money into. So you might, instead of paying him 14 million this year and 3 million last year, you might have paid him 6 million and 10 million, and then it increased it consequently. But I think that going after the third year would have been a better solution. The only issue is a lot of players don't want to do that. I understand the concept of security, but players like Aiyuk usually like to bank on having a big year and then getting the contract after the big year. Aiyuk eclipsed 1,000 yards last year, but it was clear he was, primed for a bigger year this year, and that was clearly the case. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I might have been a little hesitant to go after that contract extension after the last year, look to cash in even more, because that clearly has made a big difference in the amount of money that he's likely to get whenever that deal materializes.
And I think the team shouldn't have done a contract in year 3 or after year 3 from team perspective, right? At least when you're looking at, he just had his first 1,000 yard season. Now I would have done it. And the reason why I would have done it is because you saw him have a close to 1,000 yard season, just missed it by a couple of yards. And then when you look at his year 3, had 1,000 yard season, looked really like the part, like a true number 1 receiver. And then what happens is you could get him on a cheaper deal, but also you're banking on that 5th year option to be part of that deal. A lot of times teams use that as a part of their contract negotiation during that third year. You know what? Okay, we're going to give you this extension. We're going to use that 5th year as the first year. So it's still a low number. And then it kind of redrops again in terms of cap number. But where I think the Niners overplayed their hand to this question that was asked is waiting so long in the process of extending these receivers. We've seen receiver after receiver after receiver get extended, whether it was before the draft or right after the draft. I think the Niners just wait too long to sign a player of that caliber. You know he's going to get his money no matter what, and yet you're waiting so long where all these new extensions come, and all that does for Aiyuk and his camp is, you know what? I was a second team All Pro. That guy hasn't been an All Pro. So now it's like, wait, I've been voted this. I've shown that I'm one of the best receivers in the NFL. Obviously, when you're an all pro for a reason. What does that say about Brandon Aiyuk? It's like, hey, you know what? Pay me what I'm worth. You can't be letting guys like Waddle get this contract, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins, and all the receivers that Rohan's named when he has a little bit more accolades because he has that all pro under his belt. So I do understand in terms of wanting to get that contract done sooner rather than later. Rohan, the question for me after do you think he wants out based off of that comment on that Instagram post where he was like, the Niners said they weren't trying to move me? What do you think is going on with Brandon Aiyuk? Is he trying to be moved at this point? Do you feel the sense of disrespect from Aiyuk's end? Do you feel like, you know what? Like, you don't just go out there and comment something like this unless you feel disrespected or there's something else going on. What are your thoughts on, does he want to be moved? I believe you're muted.
There we go. To me, I don't think he wants to be moved. I think the ultimate goal is still to get an extension, but If you're Brandon Aiyuk at this point, you're just looking to get your money, as soon as possible. It doesn't matter where it is. And I don't think Ayuk's oblivious to the fact that his name was probably involved in trade talk at some point this offseason. I'm sure his agent even got the information from the 49ers themselves. It's not that the 49ers never denied that they were going to take phone calls. I'm sure phone calls came in. We heard Pittsburgh. I mean, we've heard a lot of names involved, for Brandon Aiyuk potentially, with teams expressing interest. Washington probably made a lot of sense. I mean, the Jaden Daniels connection with Washington knowing that they were going to take him, the Adam Peters connection with Peters being in the building the last few years, it makes sense that there was a phone call had. I think Ayuk is just trying to, with that, you're trying to stir up the pot a little bit. And in a way, it's just public perception. Fans, if they're against you, trying to get them on your side a little bit. I don't think that that comment has too much to do with the ongoing negotiation aspect.
This is why I like doing the show with Rohan, because he keeps it so like, you know what, nah, like we're overblowing it. Like obviously it's a little overblown, over proportion or whatever. I think there's something to it, Rohan. I feel like, so, for example, I feel like this is him saying, in a way, I was told they were not going to take any offers and any phone calls on me. Now look what they did, right? Like that's kind of how I felt when I saw this. Like I was like, when I saw the comment, I didn't even go into like thinking, oh, this is what Brandon Aiyuk feels. My first thought was the Niners told him, because the comment was, but I thought the Niners was never trying to trade me. My first reaction was they must have told him, we're not looking to trade you. We're not looking to take calls or offers on you. Yet reports come out that they took offers from the Commanders, that it fell through. So that's kind of a little disrespectful if the team did tell him, hey, we don't plan on taking any calls. We don't plan on taking offers on you. They end up taking these calls. They take these offers. It's a little disrespectful to the person, Brandon Aiyuk, not necessarily the player, because you told him and he took your word for it that, you know what, I'm not going to have to worry about any trades. All I need to worry about is the contract negotiation with the 49ers. And now he's having to worry about trades because there's teams calling on him. So I think that might have been a little disrespectful to him. And I feel like that may be why he called for that meeting with the Niners yesterday. We have, shout out to the coach. If you guys haven't, make sure you guys subscribe to his channel. Bang Bang says, so essentially BA is upset. What's the real outcome? They may have screwed up the timing and negotiations, but ultimately they hold all the leverage. Trading BA only hurts us as a franchise. I agree. It only hurts you as a franchise. So will the drama with Brandon Aiyuk, Rohan, will that end with the 49ers extension, or what is the outcome? Like obviously the question was, what's the outcome? Do you think the drama ends with the Brandon Aiyuk extension, or is he traded?
Man, this is some light stuff compared to what we had with Debo. All right, this is light. No, I'm kidding. But like, I don't think this is going to be too. I don't think this is going to be too worrisome. I think the Niners get it done. Extension, get it done. Regardless, at this point, given that this is a lot different because Ayuk had a 5th-year extension, whereas Debo did not. And so, and also you have, you're pretty clear with the Ayuk situation, whereas Debo had that one big year. I think the Niners will ultimately get it done by the time training camp comes around. My main concern is just we've seen what's happened kind of with the last two situations, Debo Samuel in 21 and then Nick Bosa in 20, or I don't know the years exactly. Nick Bosa last year, Samuel back when he got his. They both acknowledged that they had slow starts to the season because they were, away from the facility for that long. Ayuk's been away from the facility. I'm not saying he's not trading or anything, but it takes some time to get back into football shape, to get back into the groove of things, reacquainted with the team and things like that. That's what I'm worried about, where you don't want a slow start for Brandon Aiyuk, and you also want him to make sure that he's healthy, right? Throwing him back into the fire too quick to the season, that's not the best thing. Both obviously, he pretty much just he was thrown straight into the regular season, that kind of thing. But with this situation, I think that the 49ers will get it done. Regardless, I think the worst case scenario is just he plays the 5th-year option to begin the year. They figure out a deal at some point. But I'm not too worried in the sense that Niners have all the leverage. They can do what they want. And I think that they ultimately will get an extension, just knowing that when you look at all their moves from this offseason, it's posturing for the Niners to go into their future with Brandon Aiyuk as their focal priority at receiver. They didn't touch Deebo Samuel's deal, making it clearer. Also took a lot of phone calls on him, making it clearer that they don't know if he's going to be a part of their future. And he has a tradable contract next year. There's clearly a lot of interest in him. You're hoping a bounce back year gets you the capital that you want. You drafted Ricky Pearsall with the hope of obviously replacing Samuel and having two man beaters on the outside. I think that all the dominoes point to trying to keep Brandon Aiyuk. The Niners have kind of remained on that front. I don't think that this drama ends poorly for the 49ers. Now, I'm not going to guarantee an extension. There is a slight chance he
Guarantee it,
plays,
Rohan. Guarantee it.
but it just feels like this is going to end in an extension because we still have so much time before training camp.
Give the fans of the show what they want to hear, Rohan. Guarantee an extension. What do you...
Man, because hell, who knows? He could come out there, play fifth year option, he could just tear off the Niners on his jersey, go out there, and just like slap an Aiyuk or slap his logo on
puts
there.
a black electric tape on the Niners part.
Something like that.
Gets fined.
He could do that. He could do that. And then do the Marshall and Lynch, I'm only here so I don't get fined, that type of thing.
So we had
happen.
Jonas says 1 point marker 2016 Falcons. Matt Ryan threw for 4,900 yards and only receiver with over 700 yards was Julio at 1,400. Shanahan thinks he can scheme anyone open. It's hubris, but it is what it is. I think Kyle Shanahan probably thinks he made Julio Jones. If we're being honest, like he probably thinks he invented Julio Jones, which is would be hilarious if he thinks that, because Julio Jones is one of the greatest receivers to ever play in terms of talent wise. Ryu Kent says trade his ass. Tired of all the whining. I mean, there's no whining going on. You don't see him whine when he's on the field. He is publicly stating his frustration with the organization. That is not whining. That is him just telling the fan base what is going on. We saw it with Deebo. It's funny. A lot of fans typically, when a contract negotiation comes, they always say trade a player. But during the season, when that player is doing great or that player is catching passes off of someone's helmet in the NFC Championship game, they're saying he's the greatest receiver on the team or greatest receiver since XYZ. They're celebrating his success. But when he wants his success to be paid for and he wants his success to be acknowledged, they say trade his ass. He's just whining. To me, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm not no shot at you, Ryu, but it's just a lot of people on Twitter have been saying the same thing, and I've been saying the same thing on Twitter. It just doesn't make sense to me for a lot of the fans to be saying this, because he doesn't complain during the regular season when he's not getting the ball as often as he should. He's not complaining when he goes a game with only 2 targets, 3 targets. He puts his head down. He went through Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, got out of it, has become an all-pro receiver. There's no complaining going on. He's doing everything the organization has asked from him. All he is asking for is a contract extension at a fair rate that he believes is his price. That's not whining. That's him staying true to his value. So I don't understand where you're coming from. What window is closed? That's my question. What window? Do you think the Super Bowl window? Because if you think the Super Bowl window is closed, that's another topic for another day. Before I get to my response on if I think an extension will happen, I wanted to get to this question. Actually, no, I'll do my. I think an extension gets done.
Yeah, you can answer.
Yeah,
this. Yeah,
I think an extension gets done. I think at the end of the day, the Niners understand that Brandon Aiyuk is too valuable to Brock Purdy than they want to truly admit. He is a great receiver. Obviously, when you're named All Pro, that says something across the NFL. They're acknowledging you for what you've done throughout the season. So being a second team All Pro, the team understands that he's a great receiver. He does everything right. He's shown the culture of the 49ers. You want to be able to draft players and develop them into All Pros where the first year they may be struggling to learn something, and they put their head down and they learn it. I think he does get extended. I don't think it's going to be at the number that people keep throwing out. I keep seeing people throw 30, 32. I think his number that he has in mind, obviously he's going to throw 30 million out there so he could get what he wants. I think 27, 28 is that range that he wants. The biggest number that he wants, in my opinion, and I think what's holding it up, the Niners have been wanting to do 3-year contracts with players. They did it with Deebo. They have done it with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, CMC's was a 3-year deal, was it not?
2-year extension, but
2-year,
yeah.
right? So,
But they got
so
him initially when he had 3 years left. Yeah.
so they want to do 3-year deals. In my opinion, I think that's what because they get. It's essentially a 2-year deal. You're not putting money into that third year. You're adding an extra void or 2 years of void, which lowers your cap number. Which I understand from a team perspective, but from a player's perspective, you want a 4 or 5-year deal because it's giving you that long term um, on a team where you don't have to worry about a contract. So I think the thing that's holding this contract up is the length of the contract and also the guaranteed money. I think at the end of the day,
Yeah.
even though the numbers of average per year are being thrown around, I think the guaranteed money is what he truly wants. I don't think he cares about the 30 million per year. If he hits that 50 million guaranteed at signing, he's won because that's putting him in the top 3 of contract for receivers. And when you look at the fully guaranteed money at signing, that's putting him above Calvin Ridley, which he got 47, putting him right under AJ Brown, which rightfully that's where he should be. He shouldn't be getting nothing around the 45 under Calvin Ridley. He's a better receiver, so I understand where he's coming from. Now, would I take a trade for Brandon Aiyuk for Jahan Dotson and a second round pick? This was a Trade Commanders content creator poll they had posted. I wouldn't. I think Brandon Aiyuk is a much better receiver than Jahan Dotson. I think a second round pick doesn't do nothing for you this year. It only hurts your team. Now, Jahan Dotson may be able to put up much better numbers in the 49ers offense, but Jahan Dotson also is going to be in the same situation. Let's say Jahan Dotson puts up 1,000 yards for the 49ers in his third season. He would have 2 500-yard seasons, a 1,000-yard season. Let's say he gets the 1,000-yard and another 1,000-yard season. What do the Niners do? They end up saying, "Oh, we don't want to pay you either." Like, so do you eventually move off of him too? I'd rather just pay Brandon Aiyuk. He's an all-pro receiver already. You know what he is in your offense. I'm about what you know a player is rather than what can Jahan Dotson be in the 49ers offense. I would not take this deal, even though you're getting a second-round pick on top of a receiver. What about you, Ron?
Now, I view this in 2 ways. If you're just talking about this deal just normally, I think that you can get behind it in the sense that essentially this is like, do you view Jahan Dotson as in the value of a second round pick? Sure. I think you can make an argument for it. Now, if you're talking about the Niners, this is absolutely not, just because, like Marco said, the goal is to compete for a championship in 2024. This might be the last year you have this true core together, and Jahan Dotson is not a better player than Brandon Aiyuk. They're going to make similar money this year. Money is not the issue, even after his extension. And a second round draft pick in 2025 doesn't help you in 2024. Now, and I mean, the other part is, if you bring up the contract thing, if you want to just trade for, if you want younger receivers or cheaper receivers, you should have just traded Aiyuk for a first round pick or whatever and just drafted a receiver this year. The whole point, though, is to go for a Super Bowl. I think that that's pretty clear.
I mean, they did draft the receiver. Do you not think Ricky Pearsall is a receiver that's capable?
I meant another one. Like or
an actual good receiver. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not. I'm not going to dig myself.
I'm just messing. I'm messing with you. I'm. You know what I'm doing to you, bro.
What I meant is, yeah, you should, if you wanted to, though, you have to improve this year. You can't go for talent for next year. And there was a clear directive. The Niners believe that Brandon Aiyuk provides them the best opportunity to win a championship this year. I don't think you have to stick with that logic. And I think that that's the ultimate way to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And everyone knows what I was trying to do to Rohan. I was trying to put him in a corner and mess with him to get him to say something so I could clip and put it on social media like I always try to do. Rohan's too smart for that, though. Roger Morales says, you almost got. So I almost got you. That's probably the closest I've gotten to getting you to say something that you don't want to say. I think Roger Morales says, I think BA stays personally, but man, will I celebrate if he's out the NFC West? Hey, Roger's gonna be celebrating Brandon Aiyuk like I celebrated Aaron Donald retiring. Woo, boy. Oh, it's not one of those. Oh, my bad, Roger. My bad. I forgot. You're still probably grieving over Aaron Donald retiring. Shout out to the Rams, though. Shout out to you, Roger. Just messing with you, man. Appreciate you for tuning into the show. Aaron Donald. Oh, that's you remember Daniel Brunskill, who used to be on the Niners?
Oh yeah,
that's his son.
Yeah, my bad. I forgot. Yeah.
Hey, we control here too, man. I appreciate you, Roger. Radar says, how will Kyle be looked at if he fails to win a Super Bowl in this window? I think if he fails to win a Super Bowl, I think you're going to have, and you should have media, at least mainstream media, putting a fire under him and possibly calling for his job, to be honest with you. So for me,
In this
it's,
window, that would be like, I'm one of the bigger Kyle Shanahan guys out there, and I've said, I didn't.
but what is the window though? Is
I
the
was
window
viewing
Brock Purdy?
window. No, I was viewing window by the time Brock Purdy gets his extension. So 2025 was my window. So the next 2 years, before Purdy gets his extension, was my window. And so if he fails by then, that's significant because he's going to now be in the category of best coaches of all time to never win a Super Bowl. And that's not a great category to kind of be in, He's going to be in the Andy Reid category before Reid kind of joined the Chiefs. And that's like, when you talk about the tiers of coaches, that's directly tier number 2. He can't ever eclipse that hurdle if he doesn't win one.
No, yeah, and it's one of those ones where he has the quarterback. So I mean, next year after 2025, after 2020, this season 2024, I think he gets his extension. 2025, he'll still be on a cheap deal before that number starts to skyrocket. So I mean, yeah, you have to start talking about him as being fired, getting rid of Kyle Shanahan if he can't win it with Brock Purdy, obviously with the core that they have and how great of a roster they have. It's just very interesting to see. I mean, I'm not going to go there yet. We're not going to have that conversation yet, but it is something that we would have. And like Radar says, we just want players to get what they deserve. Dedicated Gaming Platform says, great stream. I got to head out, and I left a thumbs up, and I got the notification on for the future. Great Discord. I appreciate you, man, even though you're probably not here anymore. You're the real one. Roger comes back and says, nah, AD did what he promised and rode off in the sunset. He did win them a ring. I give you that. One of the best players of all time. Give him that. Now, if he would have been traded, I would have lost everyone would have lost their mind. Now, Rohan, what team should trade for Brandon Aiyuk? If he is traded, what team do you think should trade for him? I know I'm going to give a team after you that I don't think anyone's talked about, and I think he would be the perfect fit for this team. But I'm guessing you'll probably end up saying it because you probably have the same idea.
I haven't even looked at potential teams. So I guess off the top of my head, if you're kind of thinking about it, you're looking for teams with, that kind of need that receiver one kind of guy or something like that. I know a lot of people, you point out Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is fair. You do have George Pickens there, who I guess you could end up making the number 2, but you might have to pay him sooner than later. Washington, obviously,
bro.
the best
Hold on, wait. Before we continue, this dude, Brother Bob, shows up for the beginning of the show to act like he's watching the show, and then shows up and is like, "Okay, I'm back." Wow,
but
wow,
Brother Bob,
wow.
We appreciate you.
Wow. No, that's not gonna fly here. Wow.
Now, wow. I do have a couple in mind. I don't know if I personally would like all of the options, but I'm looking for teams that kind of need that receiver one, have a good quarterback in place, and could have certain pieces. If you're looking in the NFC, my underrated one that would never ever happen just because of the history of the two teams is the Green Bay Packers. I mean, they're a team with elite young receiver weapons who I think could all end up being receiver number 2 kind of guys. If you're done with the Christian Watson experiment, you could look to package him in a pick and a trade or something like that and send him over to San Francisco. He kind of takes over the Aiyuk role. And then you've got him. You've got Dontavion Wicks. You've got, Romeo Doubs. You've got Jaden Reed. You've got a lot of talent over there that they could do. Obviously, the thing is they have a lot of talent, so might not need it. The New York Giants, that could be an option. Him and Malik Neighbors kind of having a duo with Neighbors now on a 4-year deal that's relatively cheap. I think, though, if you're looking at AFC teams, which are more likely, the Buffalo Bills. They're a team
that's the team I was gonna name.
Okay.
See, this is why I don't like Rohan. This is why Rohan just be, man, Rohan. What am I gonna do with you, my man?
Josh Allen needs his new Stephon Diggs.
Dude, imagine, but not even though. So the thing is, those people were calling Brandon Aiyuk a diva, right? A diva is like Stephon, because Stephon, you turn on the film and you see Stephon throw his hands in the air, pout, put his head down. Aiyuk wouldn't care if Josh Allen's picking the team apart and he's only gotten 3 targets in the game. So like that, for me, that is the ultimate team. If they're looking for a receiver to pair with Keon Coleman, go get Brandon Aiyuk like that. But I'll let you continue before I keep going.
And I'll give one or two more. The two ones that I was really looking at, again, you don't know if San Francisco would trade them. The Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Baltimore, obviously a big time contending team, but their receiving core hasn't ever been strong early or to the caliber that you'd hope for Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar. That's the trio right now. Bateman has kind of been up and down with the injury issues. Flowers is electric, but you kind of view him more in the slot. Get him the outside guy with Brandon Aiyuk. Or, obviously, like I said, the Buffalo Bills. That makes sense. And then the one that I'll just throw out there for fun is what do you call it? The Los Angeles Chargers. Not necessarily a competing team, a team that likes to run the football. I just love to see Justin Herbert throw the ball to Brandon Aiyuk. But if I was going with my top two, it'd be Buffalo or it'd be Baltimore.
So before I get to a couple of teams, I wanted to. So Roger Morales says, "Hey Marco, when will you be starting to cover the whole NFL?" I saw a previous stream you had mentioned. So I'll be doing a NFC West ranking this week. Also be doing top 10 coaches this week. But I'm gonna start doing that starting this week and getting into that. Obviously, Brandon Aiyuk is the big topic of the whole NFL right now. Obviously, NFL media is talking about it. So for me, I'm looking at that. But definitely gonna be talking more NFL. So I appreciate you for tuning in, Roger. We'll see where your team ranks up in the NFC West. I'll be going live tomorrow with Ashley Ariana to talk about the NFC West rankings. Want to do eventually rookie of the year projection way too early before training camp, stuff like that. So I'll be getting into that one very soon. So tap in. NFC West is coming and see where the Rams rank up with the Niners. But looking at the trade scenarios, the Bills make sense. The Jaguars make sense. Giving him they just signed their quarterback and his cap numbers are fairly reasonable where you could go out and get a true number one receiver and pay him. Now that would give Trevor Lawrence two receivers. Obviously they got Brian Thomas. They would have Brandon Aiyuk. Now I'm not sure on how Brian Thomas is as a true receiver or whatnot. I think I don't know how that's going to work out. But it would give him a true receiver in Brandon Aiyuk, and hopefully you would be able to see what he truly is before his life. He has like 4 years on his deal where there's low cap numbers, where essentially you could see what he can be in the future. So I'm excited to see that for Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, they need a true number one receiver. Lee Ving says Bills let Diggs go. Do they need to pay another diva? Brandon Aiyuk isn't a diva. Watch the film.
Once he gets his money, you're not really going to see that. If you believe he's a diva, I don't think that that's going to be an issue at all.
Yeah, it's when you watch Brandon Aiyuk, even when he's not getting targeted, he's running hard routes, he's blocking downfield. A lot of the big runs we see CMC, Deebo Samuel have, you usually see Brandon Aiyuk running down the field blocking. That means he's not a diva. Like divas aren't going to go downfield 80 yards downfield blocking for their running back. Like that's not what divas do. Divas want the ball. He's not a diva. So you get him. Obviously the Steelers, a team that I would like to see make a trade for him, even though I don't know how they would be able to do this, is the Indianapolis Colts. Getting Anthony Richardson, another receiver. He obviously has a couple of receivers over there in Michael Pittman. I believe they just drafted. I could be mistaken.
They drafted Josh Downs and then A.D. Mitchell.
A.D. Mitchell. So imagine. So that's one of my favorite receivers. In the receiver class of this year, I cannot believe I forgot his name. But when you have A.D. Mitchell over there, you pair him up with Brandon Aiyuk, Michael Pittman. I think that gives their young quarterback all the weapons you need to see if he's truly that number one quarterback that you can extend in the next couple of years. Obviously, he looks the part already. His rookie year, he was having some good film. A couple other good teams that I see out there that I would pipe dream for them. The New England Patriots,
right?
Drake May. I think that would be their biggest thing. Is you're probably going to get an early second, and that's going to be a higher pick for them, or a first round pick, if possibly within the top 10, top 15, because they're not going to be that good. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're probably going to put their names into that category if he's being traded. Now, that's not going to happen. Obviously, that's going to probably the worst destination for him if you're the NFL or if you're the 49ers. But they're probably going to put their name in that category because they understand that they would win another Super Bowl with him. Um, Pay me diva, not player diva. You could. That's I don't get it because when the quarterbacks do it, we don't. We ain't. I guarantee you, no Niner fans going to be calling Brock Purdy a diva when he wants to get extended. I don't get it. Or like any other quarterback, they don't get called divas. I don't get why other players get called divas when their contracts are up. It just doesn't make sense to me. So our quarterbacks divas, our head coaches divas when they're ready for their extension. Was Kyle Shanahan a diva when he wanted his extension not so long ago? Like that's to me, that's how I see it. But Rohan, is there any other players out there on the 49ers roster that should be extended before training camp? Obviously, you want to lock up some players and get those guys going.
Yeah.
Obviously, leaving before we get to that, leaving says, why is there drama around the situation? 49ers Niners do contracts late, may or may not be the best way to do business. Aiyuk knows that, and it's still a bunch of drama. Maybe because the team, maybe because when you see a bunch of people get promoted before you and get that extension before you, it feels very personal. Maybe there's a human aspect into it, and then it's not just a football player aspect. Maybe that when you look at it, we don't know what's being said behind those closed doors in the negotiations. Maybe Brandon Aiyuk was told that, hey, we're not going to take any calls on you. We're not going to negotiate with any other teams on a trade. Yet they had done that, and it's been reported that they did it. Maybe he was lied to. Maybe he was told that by a certain day they wanted to have a contract done and they wanted to meet in the middle or something. We don't know what's going on. His frustration obviously tells you that there's more to the negotiations that are being out there being told by the media. Remember, the media, the guys like Adam Schefter and stuff like that, who aren't former players, they're giving you what the team wants you to hear. For example, we heard Ryan Clark say something yesterday, and that was directly from Brandon Aiyuk because these players are starting to go to former players in the media to get what they have to say out because they know reporters like to report for the team. So that's my perspective. Rohan, any 49ers that should be extended before the training camp?
You look at the 2025 group, right? And what do I mean? The 2025 free agents. The Niners have a lot, you know. If you're looking at that group, guys who are kind of on their final year of their deal, Aaron Banks is a guy who you kind of think of. You look defensively, Dre Greenlaw is a guy who's going to be a free agent after next year. Charvarius Ward is going to be a free agent after next year. Tano Hufanga, Diamador Lenore, really that entire cornerback group, except for Renardo Green, is going to be a free agent after next year. You have a lot of guys who play crucial roles for the 49ers, and I think that they are all kind of in that extension category, obviously alongside Brandon Aiyuk. And so to me, I pointed out two cornerbacks, Diamador Lenore, Charvarius Ward. I think it's imperative. You have to pay one of the corners. The cornerback position has been underrated by the 49ers, for a long portion of this current regime, but they've proven their value. And I think you need one lockdown corner at least. Given the contract situation, I kind of lean towards Trevorius Ward, even though Giamador Lenore is younger, just because Ward has a $12.2 million dead cap hit next year that a lot of people aren't considering. If Ward goes in free agency, the 49ers still count $12.2 million against their cap. And to me, also, I think Ward is the better player. I don't buy that Lenore has the bigger ceiling. I do think Lenore fits the 49ers a little better because he's versatile and he can do a couple of different things like run fits and things like that better than Ward. But I think when it comes to coverage, Ward's still in the prime of his career. I think it makes sense to extend him. I'd probably go with Ward given the
Do
contract
you
situation.
think?
Go
Do
ahead.
you think on him? Just because I know with the Ward, like you're right, he's in his prime and everything. But do you think the team wants to wait to see how he looks in camp post core injury?
I don't know. The reason is because they knew he's kind of been dealing with this core injury for like years. He's dealt with it for years and still produced at a pretty good level. I think they do wait, and that's why I'm not sure if an extension comes before camp or after or during or after or whatever. I think it'd be more likely to happen before the season. But I think there are a lot of things to weigh. If Ward just wants too much money and where the cost of, having to take on that 12.2 million cap hit is all right, then you go with Lenore, who will be cheaper probably and is also younger. And I think the important part is you find a way to pay one of those guys. Apart from that, though, honestly, Marco, I don't see the 49ers extending any of their other guys. Drake Greenlaw, I think you're going to be a wait and see, just given that he won't probably
Yeah,
be ready for week
unfortunately,
10.
that one sucks, man.
It's
He's such
really
a good player.
unfortunate
It's just
because he
unfortunate.
was a guy. I mean, you love the combination of him and Fred Warner. That also might lower his cost, to where the 49ers might be a little more comfortable later down the line. I don't see that being extended right now. Aaron Banks, I expect the 49ers to let him walk in free agency. Um,
Whoa,
I don't think the 49ers
really?
are going to pay him. I don't. I just
Whoa.
don't see that for the reason.
That one's gonna piss a lot of 49er fans off who have been wanting to upgrade the O-line. That one is very, very interesting. That one is wow.
I
I'm
think
blown
Aaron
off by
Banks
that one.
gets 13 to at least 13, but really realistically in the $15 million range next year. And you see this, Aaron Banks is a good player. Is he worth $15 million a year when you allocate that to other positions? I don't know. Just because the markup in free agency for offensive linemen is so significant. Robert Hunt, he's an above average offensive lineman, I'd say, and he got $20 million with $63 million fully guaranteed. There are going to be teams that are in need of offensive linemen, specifically at guard, that are going to look at Aaron Banks and throw him a significant amount of money. I don't know if the 49ers will be able to match it, just like they did it with Laken Tomlinson. And Banks has been a good player for them, but I do think that they probably have to find a way to move on just because of their other cap allocations. And so I don't see Banks being extended. And Talanoa Hufanga is also coming off a major injury. The Niners have drafted his replacement with Malik Mustafa. I don't see him being extended. I think that that's the way the Niners go.
Unfortunately, I agree with you on the Hufanga one. Even though he's one of my favorite players on this roster, I just love how he plays, and just him as a person and as well is just for me. I definitely think I would like to see him get extended before training camp. I don't see it happening. Now, if he was to take a low contract where it's very team friendly, I could see them doing it. Now, he's an all pro last year or the year before or before last year, tore his ACL this past season. Coming off that big injury, I don't see the Niners extending him before training camp. Now, I would love to see that because he's my favorite player one of my favorite players. I think Fred Warner is my favorite, and then Hufanga. But for me, I think they should extend Aaron Banks now. Get him on that signing bonus. Get him on that signing bonus money because the moment you present the signing bonus money to an offensive lineman where he's not getting paid crazy money. I believe his contract was only a
It's like
4-year, $7
probably
million
4 years.
deal.
Yeah, somewhere around a
Yeah.
million a year.
So this is his highest base salary, which is like a 3 million. So you could get him on a contract where it's gonna look team friendly because that guard market has skyrocketed. Like every position is starting to go up. So if you could get him on that good deal, obviously I would do Aaron Banks. I would not extend Charvarius Ward at the age of 30. I'm gonna hit that 30 range. Coming up next year, we'll be 29 this season. Turns 29 by the time they would extend him in 2025. I just want to do that one. I would instead do Demo. I want them to extend Demo before the offseason. Another guy that I really want them to extend, but I don't think they do. When you're looking at the 49ers roster, there's not many players that you're looking at where like, you know what? They should extend this guy. That guy for me, unfortunately,
I have two.
fortunately,
I want to hear you. Go ahead.
he's a restricted free agent.
Hmm.
He plays running back. I think they
Oh.
should extend Jordan Mason.
Oh, okay.
Now you throw Jordan Mason a very team friendly contract. Now remember he was undrafted, so that contract's it's gonna hit different. It's gonna feel a little bit different for a player like that. I think he's capable of being a number one running back in the NFL in terms of running the ball. I think he could be a great number two to Christian McCaffrey. I want to see him get extended before training camp. I think he is the number two running back in the 49ers backfield right now. And I think it would be wise for them to keep him. Now, he is a restricted free agent, so they don't have to do that. For me, I'm just saying that I want to see a guy like him get rewarded. They could let him play out, give him that tender where it's like $2 million or whatever he stays on the roster for very cheap. And then they could think about it after that. So his contract isn't really worrisome, or you don't got to worry about it. Another guy that I want to see them extend that they probably won't is well, I cannot think of his name, Malik Collins, because you traded
I've
for this
seen that.
guy.
Mhm.
You traded for this guy. Now you didn't give up much. You only gave up a 7th round pick. He's only 29 years of age. Now defensive tackles could play a little bit longer. Um, he has an out in his contract next season, so he's under contract. No, it's a I believe it's a full
Essentially,
year.
since he got traded, he has no guaranteed money past this year. Next year is like a $10 million salary that is non-guaranteed.
Okay, so on the thing on Spot Rack or OTC, both of them they have him as a um unrestricted free agent in 25.
Mhm.
So I don't know. So I would extend him, give him obviously change that. I'm not giving him that 10 million that he has of a cap hit. It's like 9.5. Extend him, lower that number. Um, I think early, but I think he may be a very good pass rushing interior defensive tackle for the 49ers. So those are some guys I would extend. And the reason why I brought this conversation to the Brandon Aiyuk conversation because we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk getting extended, and the media has only talked about Brandon Aiyuk when the 49ers have so many key free agents coming up next year. So this is the time where it's like, hey, wait, there's other guys who should be negotiating contracts, but unfortunately, because they're not the big name player, they're not getting talked about like that. So that's why I wanted to shine some light on some of those guys and talk about a guy like Talanoa Hufanga, who is a big name player, but unfortunately, due to the injury, he's not going to get a contract. A guy like Dre Greenlaw, another injury where he might not get a contract, where Aaron Banks has played well. Like, so for me, that's why I brought the conversation up in terms of who should get extended before the training camp.
Yeah, and I think that those are all good names. The last two I'll throw before we get out here that I honestly think are realistic. It one truly kind of depends on his future, and one I think is an underrated name. I think George Kittle is the guy who's going to be a candidate for extension. Reason being, the Niners they
Okay.
chose to touch up his deal this offseason, and they, that makes it really difficult to kind of move off of him. You obviously could eat, whatever the dead cap hit is above 15 million or so next year. You can make it a post June 1st cut, like they did with Eric Armstead this year. But I think that George Kittle's the guy who the Niners view as really valuable, just given their struggles at identifying talent at the position. He could be a guy who you, especially hopefully post surgery, you get him, you get him an extension and you hope he's not necessarily worrying about his health as much. He's playing as physically as he was before. I think that you can kind of tie him down maybe on a 2-year deal or so and have him be a Niner for a while. Get him some guaranteed money, maybe a deals like Christian McCaffrey's where you get him some guaranteed money and potentially it's a little better looking deal than it initially might sound. And then the second guy is Trent Williams. If Williams is guaranteed, if he's committed to playing past 2024, past, maybe even into 2025 or 26, I think you could definitely find a way to extend him. Trying to extend this window, lower his cap hit, for this next year, and you could extend him for a year or two because the Niners, I know there was a report where they have had conversations about that. Williams could look for an extension, and if he's down to play a little longer, find a way to get that done and get yourself some financial flexibility over the next few off seasons.
So I'm gonna go two names, Rohan. You could throw two names. Future 8 free agents to Niners. Have we seen the Adam Peters potentially going after that we
Ah,
see
this is
Demo
actually a good one. Go for it. Yeah.
Demo at the cornerback position, depending on what the cornerback situation looks like for the Commanders this year. I know they signed a couple of guys and drafted a few guys. I think Demo could be one of them. I think another guy who they could possibly go after is, and then I'm only going off of unrestricted because obviously
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell. Those are the two guys, a running back and a cornerback. But obviously Hufanga would be in there too. But go ahead, Rohan.
I think my top guy is Drake Greenlaw. I think they're going to look for the Bobby Wagner replacement after
That's a
after his
damn good
1 year
one.
deal. Middle linebacker. That's what Drake Greenlaw wants to play. Perfect timing. There's a trust he might get a 2-year deal out of coming out of his ACL injury. I think that he could lead that defense, be the middle linebacker for them. So I like the Demo pick. I'll add Drake Greenlaw.
Damn, that's a damn good one. I didn't think it because I think he'll eventually get an extension with the Niners. I hope. I mean,
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to lose him. I mean, when you have your Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman kind of replacement that people like to compare to, even though I don't think Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are at the Willis and Bowman level. I thought those two dudes were just those couple of years that they had that run, they were different. But they're
Right.
two damn good linebackers in today's NFL. And then Leon Sandcastle said Debo for the Her Big Brothers. Pitt gets us SF receiver. We get a good O lineman and ascending linebackers. I don't even know who the Her Big Brothers is. I think one of them is like an edge rusher. I'm not sure what the other one is, so I'd have to look into them. Rohan talked about post surgery, 30 pounds lost. Pretty scary about George Kittle. But
Yeah.
that's it for today's show, everyone. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure y'all go to Clutch Gene Sports, hit that subscribe button on today's show, hit that thumbs up, hit that notification bell. Go to Rohan Chakravarti's personal channel. Also hit that thumbs up, notification bell, and subscribe to his channel as well. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow for a show of ranking the NFC West. I'm going to be ranking the quarterbacks, the head coaches. We're going to be ranking the teams. So there's a couple of different conversations to go in there, and it all kind of ties in together with each other to see what the NFC West is. So make sure you guys tune into that. Rohan, do you have anything planned for the rest of this week?
Not sure. Traveling at the moment. We'll figure it out when we get back. But this was a fun show. We'll see if we can get one more done before the end of the week.
Sounds good, everyone. Hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' night. Make sure you guys stay safe, stay hydrated. If you're in California, it's very hot. Appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in. Have a great rest of your night. Peace.